Welcome everyone. I hope you're having a great week. My name is Garrett McLaughlin. For the exercise of the week, I wanted to cover what's called hamstring walkouts. Hamstring walkouts, a lot of people have either a love or a hate relationship with this exercise. It's just a fantastic exercise to work on teaching people how to progress that hip bridge and hip bridge variations, but add a level of instability and also added stress on the hamstrings, right? Hence hamstring walkout. So with our traditional bridge exercises, we're primarily focusing on strengthening throughout this posterior chain and working on stability of the spine, hips, and pelvis. But in that position, right, a lot of people get to the point where they can hold this for a long period of time. I usually don't do hip bridges much longer than 60 seconds. Usually we progress the variation to make them a little bit more challenging at that point. But just to show you the typical setup on a hip bridge exercise, as I'm laying on my back, I'm going to start with a nice deep exhale. What I'm trying to do is to get this rib cage to come down, create a good centrated or aligned position between the rib cage, the spine, and the pelvis, and then I'm going to engage the glutes and the hamstrings to lift the hips up. So just to see that in action. Exhale, rib cage down, core is engaged, engage the glutes, hamstrings, hips up to the top, right? Nice straight line, knees, hips, and shoulders. That's what I'm looking for with the hip bridge. So being able to do the hip bridge, traditional hip bridge up to 60 seconds, engaging glutes and hamstrings, feeling that as the primary area, abs possibly, but trying to keep the stress out of the lower back and then predominantly in the hamstrings. We don't want the hamstrings to do everything. Glutes and hamstrings kind of share this role of holding the hips up. Once we master that, making this a little bit more challenging, going to that walk-up variation. So simply put, we're just going to start to step the feet one step at a time away from the body. You'll notice as we do this, the load starts to shift really into the hamstring. As the legs lengthen, the hamstrings have to work harder because our knee is becoming more extended as we go out there. So you're going to feel more hamstring stress, but there also is this degree of instability throughout the core, right? There's this rocking motion side to side as we start to step and walk that we need to control against. So we have added core stability here and also added hamstring stress. So just to show again, I'm going to start with my breathing. Exhale, rib cage down, engage the core, abs engaged, hips up to the top, right? Hands can assist early on, but we want to get away from them as we get more proficient with this exercise. And then I'm just controlling how far I'm stepping. Usually nice small steps. You see people early on this one, or if you try this one yourself, as you go to step and walk away, if we're not stabilizing, you can see almost like my butt is swaying side to side. We want to limit that. We want everything from the hips up to stay perfectly still as we walk the feet away. So this might mean early on, you're controlling how far you're going. Maybe that's as far as you can control. That's okay. Walk your way back, do several repetitions in that range. Over time, as we get stronger in the hamstrings and more stable in the core, we want to be able to get the legs into a mostly fully extended position. And then nice controlled hips up at all times, steps as I come back. No hands, more instability here. Really feeling the hamstrings work like crazy. Slow, controlled steps, driving the hips up as I walk back. With an exercise like that, it's a very tedious exercise. I usually go lower reps on that one. I want people to really slow it down, control their position. So rather than having higher reps and getting people to like, oh, I need to get through this thing, and they start to speed up and lose control of it. Somewhere keeping it between, it could be anywhere from 4 to 8 reps, doing 2 to 3 sets of that multiple times a week. But great exercise just to progress the traditional bridge, since those can get a little bit boring at certain points, a little bit easy for most people. Make sure at all times, exhale, rib cage down, engage the core. One thing that you'll tend to notice is as you increase the lever, right, as those legs walk away, we have a longer lever arm here. Sometimes if we're not in a good position here, we will actually flare the ribs, arch the back, and dump a lot of the stress into the lower back. So if I am really mindful of setting up with my breathing, getting the ribs down, getting the core engaged, holding that the entire time as I continue to breathe and not opening back up, I can really keep myself in a good position where my stress stays in my glutes and my hamstrings and it doesn't become kind of an arching type back exercise. So that's just one thing to be mindful of. So that is the hamstring walkouts. Definitely try those out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how challenging those are. Great variation of the hip bridge. Good to work on that core stability component, but also address hamstring strength, glute strength, that entire posterior chain. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, feel free to drop it below. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great week.